what would you say was kind of like your favorite part of wedding planning? What was like the most fun that you had?
What's like the craziest thing that's happened at a wedding?
Welcome back, everybody, to the Gimbal Guys podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sam. We're here with Nick, and we're also here with a very special guest. This is Savannah, not to be confused with Savannah. I messed that up a few times before.
It's okay.
But I've made my correction. And Savannah is actually, she was one of our brides in the 2024 wedding season, and I think this is going to be a really fun conversation because we don't really get to see this perspective a lot from the actual couple like planning side. It's always like vendors just talking about the wedding industry, and I'm really excited to hear some things about your perspective. Thanks again for
we've said it a handful of times now, but yeah, we really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm so excited.
Of course.
So I want to get in a little bit about you, your relationship with Tom, and kind of like how that goes. And then we're going to dive into some like wedding specific things. But so you and Tom went to high school together?
Actually, different high schools, but grew up in the same city.
Same city.
So we had like similar groups of friends, which is how we ended up meeting.
That's awesome. You guys have that prom pic that you guys recreated on the wedding day.
Right.
It's absolutely iconic. I love it. And so you guys were dating for how long before you got engaged?
We were together for 9 years when we got engaged, and I joked with him and said, "You have until 10 years or I'm out." Then he proposed right after 9 years.
Cutting it a little close there.
Yeah. So yeah, he was kind of close.
And he was in Hawaii, Oahu.
Yep.
How romantic.
Yeah.
I remember you guys telling us that for the first time, and I was like, this guy nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
That's why he waited so long.
Completely shocked. Completely shocked. We had gone away on a trip, like just us. It was like the first trip we'd gone, like just us to Utah a couple months before. And then we had another trip planned like for Hawaii in December. And I like joked with him right before, and I was like, "You're missing two really great places to propose." And he was like, "I can't yet. I need to save money, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Okay, fine." And then he pulled it off and completely surprised me. I had no idea.
I think we're all very glad he did.
Yes.
That's awesome. And so you didn't see it coming, but you were like, hey, we've been dating for a long time. You probably had some suspicions. Were you like, did you have any kind of like preemptive like wedding plans, thinking about things before that? Or I guess what was your mind space?
No, I mean, I knew we wanted to like probably do a wedding, but kind of thought of the idea of maybe just eloping, but neither of our families would agree with that. So yeah, I mean, I didn't really think much about like any wedding planning until it happened, because I didn't know when it was going to be.
Right. And then after the proposal did happen, how quickly after did you then flip that switch to be like, okay,
you just like open your computer right away? Just
yeah.
Like, okay, here are the things we need to do.
That night I was looking at venues online and thinking of a date. We booked our venue like I think 2.5 weeks after we got engaged, because I knew I wanted September, and my brother was supposed to be getting married the next year. So we got engaged in 2022. He was planning to get married that September. Didn't happen. But so we were planning for 2024 because we couldn't do 2023. And yeah, everything was like already getting booked up, especially in September.
You'd be surprised. Yes. Yeah. Like, I mean, I was in a similar boat. I just got engaged. Well, I say just, but it's been like 4 months now. But we wanted like a late year date, and you got to plan like almost 2 years out now. Yeah. If you want, especially in the New England area, September, October, the hottest months.
Yeah. I like learned very quickly that my date specifically was like the date of the year. Was September 21st.
September 21st.
Like I had a hard time finding vendors like pretty far out.
Yeah.
So that kind of shocked me.
Did you have trouble finding your venue, or were you pretty set on the one you chose?
Yeah, that was the only one we toured. And signed it like that day.
Just fell in love first sight. Yeah. This is the one.
Yep.
I love that. So you went with your venue first, and then your vendor kind kind of search kind of continued after that. What did you end up doing next when in that process? Did you go photographer, something else?
I think I didn't really do much for a little bit because like it was pretty far out still. And I like was thinking, I was like, I don't really need to do much yet. And then I started to realize that my date was very popular and I like started reaching out to photographers, I think, next. Yeah.
Smart. And you connected with our friend Anna. She does great work.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess like when you were like looking for vendors, what sort of things were you kind of like looking for? Did you kind of have like a certain criteria you were trying to meet? I mean, availability is one thing.
Yeah. Price was definitely a factor because there was one photographer I think that I reached out to that was like $8,000 minimum. And I was like, yeah, I can't afford that. But yeah, price and just kind of like their style too, like especially with photography.
What would you say the style is that you were looking for?
Kind of like not like super dark and moody, but not like the bright, like natural, like kind of like a middle ground.
Yeah.
Well, I think you made the right decision.
Nailed it, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, it's actually pretty cool too, because you guys had like a whole vibe. I remember you had like the till death sign, and you had like a lot of, I guess just that sort of, you had the black wedding party dresses and things like that. And I think it lent itself really well to that sort of like style. Well, I think we'll get into that in a little bit, but so style is important. Price obviously important. That's good. You went photographer. I guess what did you end up doing next from that point? How far out was that? Like a year and a half?
That was, I think I booked Anna in like June of 2023. Yeah, I think that was June of 2023 because there were a few photographers that I had reached out before I ended up with her and they were already booked. And then I think next, I want to say my florist was like what I focused on next. Yeah.
Yeah, and floral is honestly something the vendors that I feel like I personally don't have as much familiarity with is florists and then like hair and makeup. I feel like I haven't
more of the unsung heroes, really. Like,
yeah, I mean it's so important for the wedding day, and I feel like sometimes it gets overlooked, and I am guilty of that. But so florist was important. I guess what were you kind of going for with like floral? What vibe were you?
Did you have a look in mind that you know you wanted them to somewhat recreate, or?
I was definitely into like a lot of like greenery and like white flowers. Like I wasn't super into like the colorful palette, but yeah, that I reached out to a bunch and like I got hit with like shock with how much they cost.
Yes, honestly, it was a shock for me until like a year or so ago, and I realized how expensive they actually are.
There's such a spectrum too, because it's like you can get really cheap flowers, and then you can get really, really expensive flowers.
Yeah, I got a quote I think for like $12,000, and I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
but I mean, I'm sure it would have been worth it, but I couldn't fit it into my budget. So we kind of had to shop around, and I talked to a lot of different florists, and the one that I ended up booking was one that my friend who had got married the year before me used. So I had like known them. I was a bridesmaid in her wedding. So like I had met them before too. And I really like, they did like a Zoom call before like booking and like talking about just like kind of how they do things, which I really liked. So that's why I ended up booking with them. So overall,
you were pretty happy with how they came out?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good. I wasn't going to say anything until I knew you liked them, but
the only vendor I was unhappy with was my DJ.
Because I had a connection with the florist, and I've worked with them a few times, and the After All floral, right? Yeah, I really like them.
Yeah. Yeah, they were great.
Great work, great designs.
The thing about us that I like about them is for the guys' side, when they have their boutonnieres, a lot of the time the photographers and videographers have to try and help all the guys put their boutonnieres on. But the easy thing about After All is that they have magnets. So it avoids a lot of chaos in the boutonniere stage.
And I'm definitely stealing that idea. I like the magnet idea. Did it stay on pretty well for, I don't remember like.
I think so. Yeah. I don't think anyone lost them.
There we go.
Magnets. Magnets for the win. Let's do it. All right, awesome. You dove into floral kind of after that and had some good stuff there. And so we know you worked with our friend Amanda. She's been on the podcast before. We love working with her.
Did you book all these prior to talking with her, or at what point, did you?
I definitely booked my photographer before I booked Amanda, but I can't remember if I booked her before or after florals. I think it might have been before. Yeah.
And what kind of like, at what point in the process did you realize like that you wanted to reach out to like a planner, coordinator, that sort of thing?
I had no idea what I was doing. And I was getting very stressed. And my sister-in-law actually got married in 2022. Yeah, 22. And she used Amanda for her wedding, but they did their wedding like kind of differently. Like they did like their ceremony in Acadia National Park, and then 2 days later did like the reception in my backyard, which like Amanda like came and helped and set up all of that. So like I met her then. And my mom was like, you should reach out to Amanda because we don't know what we're doing and we need help. So, yeah, she came in and she saved the day.
Yeah, she does amazing work and she definitely lifts that stress off your shoulders.
Yeah, I've worked with her for a couple of years now and she's awesome.
She's how I found you guys, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was like, I can't remember how far out I booked you guys either, but I was like,
either, so.
Yeah, I was like going back and forth if I wanted one, and a bunch of people were like, you're going to regret it if you don't. And I was like, you're right. And I reached out to a few and they were booked. And then there was one that we were like maybe going to book. And then Amanda was like, reach out to them and see if they're available. And I was like, okay. And here we are.
Here we are.
I think that's kind of like an interesting theme too, is some of the criteria is a little bit of the trust that you get. So if you have the referral from a source you trust, then you kind of like automatically trust those other people, which is why it's important for us to know people like Amanda and those sorts of things so we can get on the same page. And I liked what you said about how the floral people were like willing to hop on Zoom call, get through your vision and
that
things.
Communication aspect of it.
Yeah.
I mean, we try to do the same thing. We always try to like get to know people on a deeper level so that, we connect with them, we vibe, and all of that goes well. That's awesome. So still kind of like going through wedding planning. What would you say was kind of like your favorite part of wedding planning? What was like the most fun that you had?
I feel like just like seeing it all like come together, like the day, like the morning of, just like seeing it all like laid out. I'm like, oh wow, it actually looks really good.
Right. That's awesome. I'm sure that is really satisfying.
Yeah. That was definitely my favorite part.
It's like rewarding. You can look at it like I did that. You know?
And like looking back at like all the pictures too, like just like seeing it all and like how it all came together.
That's awesome. Now, contrary to that, what would you say was like the most stressful or hardest part of planning something that's kind of like, I don't want to do that again?
Honestly, I feel like the hardest part with wedding planning is all of like the unsolicited opinions you get from people.
Ooh,
like just throwing like all these things at you, and it's like kind of just makes you like second guess like any decision that like you've made, because you'll be like excited telling someone something and they're like, oh, so and so did this, like have you thought about doing this instead? And it's like, well, now I'm second guessing what I was gonna do. But yeah, that I feel like was kind of a surprise to me, like wedding planning. Like I wasn't ready for that, and kind of just adds to the stress of like what is already kind of a stressful thing. Yeah,
that's interesting to hear, because I'm sure a lot of people feel that way, but I feel like not many people have said that out loud.
Yeah, there's always like some kind of like outside pressure when it comes to weddings. It's like, I think that's the biggest thing for couples to realize when they're going into planning their wedding. It's like, this is like probably the only day in your entire life where you can be as selfish as you want to be.
You're allowed to be selfish on this day.
Make it exactly as you want it to be.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to take those opinions, sure, take them. But you also have no obligation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you got through that planning process. Wedding day is finally here. You're enjoying seeing it come together. I guess kind of like bring us through how you felt it went from like your perspective. Like what sorts of things I guess went really well? Maybe what sorts of things didn't really go as planned? I guess walk us through it.
So like the week leading up to the wedding was kind of crazy. Which like I feel like made me more stressed leading up to the day. But I mean, everything ended up working out fine. But we had a groomsman tell us a week out that he couldn't make it. So that was fun. And then I have like a history of herniated discs in my back. And 6 days before the wedding, they flared up for the first time in like 2 years. And I could barely walk. I couldn't move. I was in like so much pain. So I was like so stressed leading up to it because I'm like, am I even going to be able to like enjoy this day at all? So that definitely like added to it, but thankfully it like worked out and it was fine. But just like the whole week leading up to it was like extremely stressful. And then as soon as like the ceremony's over, like you can actually like breathe. And yeah, it was really good after that. I feel like most of the day went pretty smoothly. There was a few things with our DJ, but other than that, I feel like everything else went like pretty close to plan.
That's good to hear. I mean, testament to kind of like just having a good plan in place. There's always going to be something that something will go wrong inevitably. And I think from our perspective, it looked like you guys were rolling with the punches and like you had the right attitude. You know?
Yeah, still made sure you had a good time. Even if something did not go perfectly as planned, you definitely made the most of it.
I have a question specifically about first look. So like there was obviously at the beginning part of the day, that's when everybody feels the most stress, it seems like. How helpful was it having a first look? Like, are you glad you did one? Was it more relaxing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I felt like super like not stressed after. I was still a little stressed, but I was mainly nervous of like saying my vows in front of a bunch of people. But so I was just really stressed about that. But it was definitely like nice to be able to just like see him and like have a second to just like breathe and just be like just with each other. So yeah, I definitely don't regret doing it at all, and I'm really glad that we did.
Yeah. And you hear that, folks? First looks are the way to go.
That's how
I feel
we
like
look at
beaten
them,
into the ground, but like we always tell people to do first looks if they're on the fence. And I've seen moments where like, hey, it is a huge stress reliever, but it's also just a good logistical thing.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely spent some time after the fact still, like during cocktail hour, still shooting stuff. But it seemed like that's what you guys wanted to do, right?
Yeah. I wanted to. I don't know if Tom really wanted to, but
he was a good sport.
Yeah, he was.
Yes, he's like, yes, honey, I will do it.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So first look, we had some DJ issues, which hey, those things happen. Roll with it. And overall, you would say pretty successful wedding day.
Yeah, I think so.
I love it. Anything kind of like, was there anything looking back at the wedding that you, I guess, regret? Do you have any wedding day regrets, if any?
Okay, so my only one is my DJ, hiring him. Other than that, I kind of wish we like started things a little earlier. So like we could have taken more photos ahead of time, so we could have like actually gone to cocktail hour, because even though we did the first look before, we still didn't really get to go to cocktail hour at all, which was kind of a bummer, but the day just goes by so fast. So
it does.
Yeah, I think good. You made a good point, because I think what some people need to think about when they're like planning their timelines is like, you might think something's going to like take a certain amount of time, but then you just need to add like 30 minutes to it because inevitably, especially like, I mean, you guys were all on site, but then when we do other weddings where it's like going from different locations, you'd be surprised at how long it takes to get a wedding party on a bus. It takes like 45 minutes to get a wedding party on a bus, and then you actually have to drive to that place and get them off the bus. And
I think it might have been Amanda who told me this. Like everything you would do on like a normal day, it's going to take you at least twice the amount of time to do it. So like simple things, tying your shoes, putting on your pants, it's going to take you longer than it would on a normal day. So account for all of that.
Yeah.
And then I think everybody like wants something from you too, because they want to like be with you on the day, but then that gets overwhelming and that adds time. All that sort of stuff. So just a couple of regrets, but overall things went pretty well. That's good to hear. You have any like kind of like, I guess, crazy stories maybe around the wedding, before the wedding, things like that? I mean, we had a groomsman back out. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So he was or is living currently in Japan, going to school.
Oh, wow.
And we thought he was coming. He told us he was coming. And then a week before, he said he couldn't make it. But yeah.
Okay.
And he just didn't end up coming.
Things happen. Anything else super crazy, or just everything was pretty mundane?
Maybe things like we, as the videographers, weren't around to see.
I'm always
and things
very
like that.
curious
Like,
to hear,
because we only see, you know, a
scenes.
certain aspect of the day that we're
Yeah.
here to film, but there's obviously so many things that are happening outside of what we're doing.
I mean, I think that's kind of really it. And then like my back issue, other than that, it was...
Yeah, you took that like a champ. I want whatever drugs you were on, because you were like,
not any.
you're just smiling the whole time. Nobody would have ever known you were in pain.
Yeah, I was honestly in so much pain, but
You danced your way through it.
Yeah, I think alcohol helped a little.
Yeah, that happens. Well, that's great. That's awesome. And I want to ask a few questions about kind of like video things specifically, because I mean, it's also just helpful for us to know, for other people to know when they go into kind of like booking a videographer, what that process is like. I mean, you talked about like you talked to few videographers beforehand. Some were available, some you were like considering, but I guess like when you started that search, what were you hoping to get out of a wedding video?
I just wanted like a really nice video to look back on. And like from the other videographers that we talked to, like a couple of them were like from like those big companies. And I was like, I don't know if I trust that. And then there was one other one that we talked to. But like after like we kind of told him like, yeah, we're going to think about it. He was like kind of pushy. So we didn't really like that, which kind of led us in that direction. Yeah. But we were just looking for like just a nice video to have.
It's a nice, elegant, cinematic video.
Yeah,
Those are just the
exactly.
buzzwords we use.
When you were looking for videographers, were you looking prior to working with Amanda, or did she pretty much give you all the options that you were looking at?
I was like looking kind of on my own, and then I had a meeting with her and kind of told her that I wasn't really having much luck, and then she gave me a few to reach out to.
Awesome. Well, like what specifically, like when you did eventually find us, when you had that recommendation, like what specifically kind of like made you gravitate towards what we did?
I just like how like the videos like kind of like told like the story and kind of just went from like the beginning of the day and just kind of like went through the whole thing. And I feel like all of like the big moments were kind of captured in the videos, which is what we were looking for.
Yeah. I mean, well, we get those big moments and stuff. I think what we do it a little bit more now is we try to go a little bit beyond the wedding day too. We're trying to like tell a little bit about, just shed a little bit of background on you guys as a couple too, because I think it's fun to like, when you do look back at that in future generations, you know, like you're going to show your kids, show your family, things like that. It's fun to kind of have that aspect. It's like, not only was this is how our wedding day was, but it's kind of like, this is how we fell in love, how our story came to be. I think it's a nice thing to have.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything that once you did get kind of like the final video delivered to you, was there anything that kind of like stood out in that you were like, this is awesome, like this was my favorite part?
Not to put words in your mouth.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
I really liked how it had like our vows as kind of like a voiceover, like in like some parts of the video. I really liked that. I think that was my favorite part.
Yeah, and you said you were nervous about reading your vows, but they became a crucial part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like always biased to that too. Because some couples, they'll have like some of the more traditional ceremonies, the couple doesn't really actually say anything other than kind of like those vows where you like repeat after me type thing. Mm-hmm. I like the personal touch just because we can use it in that way. But again, even at the ceremony on site, it's kind of like the guests get a little peek into your life as well and how you met. Mm-hmm. I like the personal touches like that.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. That was all Tom. He was all for that. If we had it my way, I would have done private vows, but that was my one compromise. So.
He only got one, and that was it.
So funny though, like looking at Tom, he read off like some really emotional things, and I was not expecting that from him at all.
He's a very emotional guy. Yeah.
That is, yeah.
Yeah. He's a big softie.
That's really great. I mean, what other things, was there anything outside of like the actual video and the finished product, was there anything that you actually enjoyed about like working with us in that process?
I just felt like it was like very like comfortable. Like I didn't feel like awkward or anything like that. It just like kind of just felt natural.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. Yeah. We definitely wanted that to come across for sure.
I think, some people have told us before, specifically him, I think he does a good job at it. He's almost like a therapist. Like we see parts of the day, especially during that getting ready time, I think there's like a lot, stress is running high. Mm-hmm. I think it's nice to, when we've seen those things a lot of times, it's nice to kind of like step in and be like, hey,
try and be that calming presence in a stressful room. Because obviously there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things that everyone is thinking about. And yeah, I mean, a lot of other vendors can be super bubbly and in your face, and that is great. And like, that's very personable.
If you connect with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but I think we just, as people ourselves, like as an individual, a natural introvert, we try to, stay just calm, cool, collected, and make sure people can kind of feed off this calmness to attempt to help them out and de-stress everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely helpful.
Yeah, and he's got his whole like first look pep talk. Did you give one to Tom? Did you
I actually don't remember. I don't know if I had the chance to.
It's kind of like if he was going into the boxing ring, it's like his coach talking to him. It's like, all right, I'm in your corner, dude. Like, this is your first look. Here's what's going to happen.
He probably wasn't nervous at all, to be honest.
Yeah. I think what was remarkable about you guys is you were very, even if things were stressful, you didn't appear it. Like you guys had a great attitude going into the day, very relaxed, and it's great to see when that happens.
Thanks.
You guys were
I didn't
confident
feel that way, but
yeah, wedding's all said and done. Some regrets, but most not regrets. I would say. I guess, what kind of questions do you have for maybe us as videographers or just us as vendors? Maybe things about your wedding. I don't know. Like, what sort of questions do you have from the vendor perspective? Things you may not have heard about already.
Even if it's not videographer specific.
Yeah.
If it's just a generic vendor thing, we still might be able to bring something.
What's like the craziest thing that's happened at a wedding that you guys were at?
That we can talk about. Let's see. We had a mom almost walk out during
we did
the getting ready process. And I think those things can happen when unsolicited opinions aren't taken.
Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone's family dynamic is going to be different, of course, but this particular group definitely was, going at it. We could tell it was not just today. This was a regular occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, family dynamics get interesting. I think we've had I think moms specifically yell at us before to move our cameras or things like that. You're blocking everything.
Actually, I have a question for you about that.
Yeah.
It's kind of specific, and I feel like only you guys would be the ones to answer it. So let's just say a family member of yours did say something to us oh, your cameras are blocking my view of the speech is being done. Can you move? As, the person that this day is all about, would you prefer that as a videographer, we sacrifice our shot that we're capturing, someone saying their speech to allow this family member of yours to have a nice view? Or would you rather the vendor that you've, brought in to be here to capture the best shot?
I'd want the best shot.
Okay. That's good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, we had that mindset going in because we're like, all right, worst comes to worst. If we're blocking like somebody's view, they can look at the video after the fact and just making sure that we have a clear shot of whoever it is. I feel like we've always assumed like that's important.
Been our response to people, because if a mom or just a random guest member did come up to us, which yes, has happened, our response is normally, like the couple, is paying for us to be here and they want us to get this captured, and this is the best way for us to do it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. We don't have too many like super crazy stories, like not the ones you hear. I feel like we do a good job like vetting our people and just making sure we connect.
I know,
with
honestly, if anything, it's a good thing that we don't have too many crazy stories here.
No like cheating or like weird things like that. Like most of our crazy stories are actually pretty tame. So I guess we can pat ourselves on the back for that. That's awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to share about kind of like your wedding process? I guess, let's see. If you had somebody going into planning their wedding, they're freshly engaged and you got to leave them with one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
Honestly, just enjoy it because it goes by so fast.
Yeah. I think people probably hear that a lot, but they don't really like take it in because they hear it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like when I was like in the process of planning, I was like, I can't wait for this to be over. But then like already like a week out, I was like sad that it was like going to be over soon. So yeah, definitely just enjoy it.
You only get to do it once.
Yeah.
And I guess, would you recommend people use a planner? Did that kind of like save you overall with the planning, or do you recommend people try and go it alone?
I definitely recommend a planner. There's so much that goes into a wedding that like you don't even think about until you're like actually in it. And there were so many things I totally would have forgotten about or just completely overlooked if I didn't have a planner. And then also she set up everything like the day of, so I didn't have to worry about any of that, which was huge for me. Like I definitely took a lot of stress off of me on like the day of.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, that's why they're there for sure. And selfishly, that's how you end up finding us.
Yeah. Did you guys have to, I know this is like totally random, but Amanda has like her little emergency kit. Did you guys have to dip into that at any point? Like she has like pins and things like that in it.
She has literally anything you could need ever.
I don't think so. I also made like my own little emergency kit,
but
I don't think so. My mirror did crack on like my seating chart mirror cracked and like we almost weren't going to be able to use it, but she somehow made it work. I don't really know what she did, but
I don't know what she did either because I got a shot of it and I didn't notice any form of crack.
Yeah, it had a huge crack like on the side. Dang. And she's like, if it gets cold, it might like crack more. And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, all right, we'll just figure it out. I'm like, okay, thanks.
It's awesome. So biggest takeaway, if you're going into wedding planning, just enjoy it.
Enjoy it, yeah.
It's going to be stressful. It's also going to be fun. So I guess just take it all in. I think that pretty much wraps it all up.
Yeah.
Thank you again for just sharing those perspectives. A lot of stuff, it's like things you hear before, but like having the confirmation is like always really good to have. And I think it's going to be really valuable for, I guess, any couples listening and also probably vendors listening. They can kind of take those things into perspective on like what's actually important on the day. So yeah, thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed it, leave a 5-star review on Spotify or like on YouTube and subscribe there as well. Follow us on Instagram at SeaMount Weddings, and any socials you want to shout out for anybody to follow you, or no, if you find her, you find her. Yeah. And if you guys are looking to book a wedding yourself, just head on over to SeaMountWeddings.com and we'd be happy to chat. Thanks again.